Canon just recalled firmware 1.2 for the Canon EOS R3. So what went wrong? Details coming up, but first I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. Canon's firmware 1.2 for the Canon EOS R3 caused the dial button to not function properly after a factory reset was performed. Good news, the issue's been fixed in firmware 1.2.1. The release notes for firmware 1.2.1 state, fixes an issue in which, after having updated the camera to firmware version 1.2.0, when performing the factory reset operation, some shooting settings are not retained. Yeah, some shooting settings aren't retained, like that dial button. Anyhow, the good news is if you download firmware 1.2.1, it's going to fix that issue. Now, if you haven't updated firmware 1.2.0 and you want to go ahead with firmware 1.2.1, it's going to include all those updates, that massive set of updates for firmware 1.2. But this brings me to something I've been mentioning every time I talk about a firmware update on this channel. If you absolutely have to go with the latest firmware update, well then do so. But if you don't, I highly suggest waiting a week or two, and then issues like this that come up, well, you can be better prepared and not go ahead with the firmware, wait for Canon to fix it, and then go ahead with a subsequent firmware update. Now, firmware 1.2.1, if you've already applied firmware 1.2.0, maybe just wait to see if there are any issues with firmware 1.2.1. However, if you are planning on performing a factory reset, then I would definitely apply firmware 1.2.1. But in all seriousness, one of the reasons why I like to get out and apply firmware updates almost immediately is so that way you don't have to. Now, sadly, I don't have the R3, so I'm unable to apply that firmware update. I did get some notes from some of my viewers stating that firmware 1.2 can't be found on Canon's websites worldwide. And I got that information, but it's been a busy weekend here. We have a long weekend. I've been working on reviews. I've been very, very busy. So I only now am I having a chance to get that video published, or getting this video published. But now that we've covered off firmware 1.2.0, I want to talk a little bit about firmware 1.6 for the Canon EOS R5. Yes, I know it came out for the EOS R6 as well, but all the news, all the goodness is being baked into the R5 version, including the ability to record 8K RAW unlimited, 4K 60, 8K oversample 4K for many hours. I had several gentlemen from Texas and Florida telling me that they basically had the camera out all weekend, all day long in 90+ degree temperatures, which is in the mid 30s for those of you on the Celsius scale, telling me that, yeah, they didn't have a problem once. So that's really, really good news. And that's real world use, not me shooting and holding down the shutter button for about 2 or 3 hours, waiting to see it would overheat. This is real world applications in very hot climates. But there's another aspect of firmware 1.6 for the R5 and probably the R6 that I want to test out. Many of you had told me in comments that that wobble, that sensor wobble, had been fixed in this firmware update. Now, I am a little bit doubtful because I was shooting a lot this weekend, and I did notice some sensor wobble using my 24-105 at around 25 to 35 millimeters. However, before I shot this weekend, based on many user comments, I went to the store and I purchased something, and it arrived today. And if you were watching my live stream on the weekend, well, you'll notice that I talked about something coming in the mail. So I figured what better way to test the wobble than with this guy here, the Canon RF 16mm f2.8. I haven't even opened the box. I just opened the packaging that came literally no more than an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. I haven't even put this on the camera. I'm shooting this video right now, and then as soon as I finish recording this video, I've got about 3 more segments to film for a review I'm doing, and I'm going to tell you about that later, but it's probably going to come out this weekend. So with this 16mm, this pancake lens, I am hoping that that sensor wobble is significantly reduced, because I've passed this lens up many times for 2 issues. One, the autofocus button is no longer on here, and if you own an R7 and R10, not a big deal, right? Because you have that switch on the body. The R5, the R6 don't have that switch. So the wobble, which is, it's the only cameras that this is going to be a problem with is our Canon's full-frame mirrorless cameras that have IBIS. Again, the R5, the R6. So if you own the EOS R, the RP, I think this is a terrific lens. The optics are pretty good, but it's all about that sensor wobble. So I'm really hoping I'm going to go out filming with this lens this week. I want to see how bad that sensor wobble is, or if it's been fixed. Hopefully it has been fixed. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest testing of firmware 1.6 on the Canon EOS R5, then go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications so that way as soon as I publish a video on anything related to the firmware update or any camera news and rumors, you'll get notified by YouTube so that way you can stay up to date on the latest camera news and rumors. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.